Hi, welcome back to Twin Chat. I'm Kenan McCumber, mom of two and teacher living in Bend, Oregon.
And hi, I'm Steph Kafori, mom of three, a life coach living in Hawaii. And we are so excited to welcome Gillian Fritz. Welcome, Gillian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, we are continuing our series with adolescents and young adults, ages 14 to early 20s, and we're talking about their journey and their experience during COVID. And as I've mentioned in the previous episodes, our intention is to really get an idea of what it's been like for these young people this past year, whether they've been in school in person or distance learning, and what it's been like staying connected to friends or feeling disconnected from their friends, and learning about what their perspective is, and what it feels like. It actually feels like to have gone through this past year in living, and I put this in quotes, but this new pandemic lifestyle. So, like I said, welcome, Gillian. And Gillian is 19 years old. She's a sophomore in college. She attends Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, and she grew up in Bend, Oregon. So, thank you again for joining us, Gillian. And Kenan, I'll let you take over now.
Well, Jillian, again, welcome. We have so many great things to chat with you about today. And first, we just kind of wanted to get an overview of what this last year has been like for you. And you can focus in on school, friendships, jobs, whatever kind of surfaces for you.
Yeah, well, the past year has been very boring, I think is the way to put it, because my basically since last March, all of my school has been completely online. So I went back to Ireland in the fall to go back to school, and I basically just never left my room. I was living in student accommodation, so I was just sharing an apartment with three other um, girls who go to Trinity as well. And you basically just start in your room from 8 o'clock to around 5, um, looking at a computer all day, and you don't really have an outlet. There was also like a big exam this year in the winter. So I stayed over winter break, and I could probably map out my room for the next 10 years exactly how it was. But it's just been a lot of like, suddenly school is less about a mix of like social outlets and doing all these different fun things and exploring your city and going to school. And it's boiled down to just school, which sure, college is just school, but it's you're missing out on a lot of the experience of what actually like you grow from.
Absolutely. And Jillian, so did most people go back to the university and do distance learning in their accommodation on campus?
So the school kind of promised us that we would have some learning in person.
Hmm.
So I was kind of unlucky because the arts classes don't ever have to be in person. But like some of the STEM students and the med students go in because they have to have lab hours in person. So some people did go in just for small things, but we went. I would say that the majority of people went back to Dublin expecting that we were going to have partial in-person classes. And then if you were in arts, you got none of that. And if you were in STEM, you got like a handful of it.
Wow. And Jillian, so this is your sophomore year, so you're still getting to know the awesome city of Dublin. So this is also, talk about leaving home and going to college. You're going to a new country.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I got my bearings a little bit first year, which was nice, especially because we don't live on campus. Last year, they have housing for international students, and it's about a 40-minute commute from the actual campus. So you kind of learn how to get around the city. But if I was living like on campus or closer, I'm pretty sure that this year I wouldn't have had any clue of where I was.
Yeah.
And Jillian, another thing I wanted to ask you about, my family was so fortunate we got to watch Jillian play water polo in Bend when she was a senior in high school, and she's amazing. And that was a big draw for you. Trinity College was because they had a great club team. And did you even get to play last year?
Yeah, we played last year. The for girls, the season is in the spring, so we missed out on like our big tournaments, but we had a few games and we practiced from September. But then this year, things opened up for about 10 minutes, and I got to go to one practice, and then it was all shut down again. But it was interesting because water polo is definitely a contact sport, and they're like, you guys can all go practice, but you can't touch each other and you can't throw a ball. Like you can't, like you can have a ball for yourself, but you can't share it with another player. So it was just swimming.
Oh, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, a little
And I
bit.
can imagine that was a big disappointment. How did that feel when you didn't get to end the season really, and then not have one this last year, or this current year?
I think that for me, it was, I don't really know if I was ready to go back fully this year. I don't think I would have played in any games. Um, and I remember at the end of last year, I went to the last practice that we had, and I was like, I'm freaking out. We're gonna get sent home. This is gonna be a big deal. And all of the Irish people on the team were like, no, 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 like it's fine. We're an island. It won't come to us. Like because no one, it was like a mix of some of the international students thought it was going to be a really big deal, but then a lot of the Irish people were like, I think it's going to be fine. So I was freaking out, and everyone was like, no, it's going to be great. We're still going to go to all tournaments and stuff. So I had kind of gone into like the end of the year thinking this isn't going to happen. And then this year, when the possibility of we would have our coach would text us every few weeks and was like, we're going to start games next weekend, get ready. Clearly that's not what's going to happen. But I was like, that's a lot of people in a pool. There's usually like around 14 people per team, and that is a lot of people to go from seeing just my three roommates basically to then seeing like almost 30 people. It felt like a big jump.
Absolutely. And I'm curious too, Jillian. So back to that three people, right? Three people in your room. So it's like do you have your own bedroom? You share, or are you sharing, like, is it like a dorm room where you're all in?
No, we all have our own rooms and our own
Okay.
bathrooms. We just share like a common
Like
area,
a
like a
common area. So
kitchen.
it's like a
Yeah.
suite. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like, sharing with three people? Like, you had a pod of three people.
Yeah, it was interesting. We're three quite different people, and who take our COVID precautions differently, if I can just say that. And myself and one of my other roommates were much more cautious, and the other two were like, one was a first year and one was on exchange. So they were both like, we're here to party. Like we're not gonna not do this just because you don't want us to. So it was supposed to be a pod, and it wasn't quite. So it basically was like we ended up, um, the more cautious roommate Aaron and I were like, okay, just like don't have more than like two people. Like don't throw a party, please. And then luckily my Aaron and I both shared one person. My girlfriend is close friends with Aaron too, so it was like we could share one person to have like between us, so we're not bringing so many people in. It sounds a little weird, but
Well, no,
No,
I
I
mean, I
get
think
it.
it's hard too because you're thrown into a roommate situation. Ththese aren't you. I'm assuming you didn't choose them as your roommates, right?
yeah.
And so you're kind of, and then you have to navigate this where you have different views on how, how, what social interactions you're going to have. And then you would think, oh, well, respect what we want, which is please don't have a party in our space. And also, if they go out to pubs and whatnot, they're exposing themselves and bringing it back, and that's hard. And
Mhm.
it's hard to be able to navigate that with people you maybe don't have a very deep friendship with, or whatever. So that's,
You don't see eye to eye with on
yeah.
such a big issue, right? This is
Mhm.
um, and and Jillian, did you like were there parties like at like did were there parties like on campus parties or people going out to pubs? What did the socials like? What was acceptable and what was normal, or what were people doing in your age group?
Um, I think it really depended on um, each group of friends. Um, a majority, maybe not a majority, but a good number of Irish students live at home and just commute into college. So they're not really partying.
Mhm.
So I think that a lot of it was international students, which is just horrible. But um, all and the government was fairly strict with the restrictions. So there weren't any pubs open. They opened for a week in December, and then there was a giant spike of cases. So then they closed. But most stuff was closed. It was just people who had houses or were living in student accommodation buildings. So I think that the one I was in probably had between 300 and maybe 400 students total. So it
Mhm.
wasn't super big, but people a, could find a group. And I think that the security people were supposed to shut down parties, but they just didn't want to deal with it. And so it was kind of left to these like 18, 19, 20-year olds to circumvent this like super challenging situation because you're living with them. It's not
Mhm.
as easy as just like telling someone off and then walking away with feeling like you're on your high horse, like you did the morally superior thing. It's like you can't stop people from seeing someone for 9 months, anybody, because you just can't, no one can survive that. um but it's like I can't tell them what to do. They're adults. I have no like agency over them. But then it's not only that are like exposing me, then I also have to burden their risk for the people that I'm seeing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are navigating those challenges, right? At like, how do I keep myself safe in a group environment? And also, like, there's a I don't know a negotiation going on, like how that all works. And it sounds like you were able to kind of figure that out with your roommates, but also kind of branch off and kind of have your own little group, your girlfriend and your other flatmate to kind of, we're our little nuclear group here on the side.
Mhm.
So what, like in terms of like challenges, tell us more about like what you feel like has been a big piece of growth for you during this past year.
um I think that this is the first time that I've ever really had to just kind of sit with loneliness. I mean, pretty young. I've never really had to spend any substantial period of time alone. I was away from home for the first time for Hanukkah and alone basically all winter break. My girlfriend was still in town, but it was something that's like, I'm not saying this very eloquently, but it's like you figure out how to cope with it. I don't even quite if I felt like I was kind of on autopilot for most of the year of like you just have to keep like a strict schedule. And this sounds a little bit extreme, but you hear about the people who like prisoners who are in isolation, and they're like, the only way to stay sane is you get up and you do the exact same routine every single day. And that's kind of how it was. It's like, I'm going to wake up at 7:30 and I'm going to eat breakfast and I'm going to study for 2 hours and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to make lunch, and you just don't deviate from it, and then it seems like it's much more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I think too, gosh, Gillian, I'm hearing you say all of this and I'm going, this isn't what college experiences are supposed to be like. It's so heartbreaking. And I know that you are currently back in Bend, and I know you did your finals here. Did Trinity close, or did you just decide I've had enough, I'm going to come back to the States?
Um, I decided that I was done. I think that staying over winter break was a challenge that I was not up to, but I thought I was. And then my roommates coming back from going back home and then coming back and being like, oh no, it's fine. Like we're not gonna, no, you can't ask us to do a 2-week quarantine. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move out then. I'm gonna go home. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
for you, because it's a lot to put on a young person's shoulders. It really is. When your focus should be on the social, college, right? The quintessential college experience, the social stuff, the of course academics is in the mix, but it's really about coming into your own in an independent way. And this is just a 180 from what we in well, what my college experience was and what would be a typical or normal pre-pandemic.
And your first semester of college, right? Your freshman year, you got to, well, the first
Three
like
quarters.
One and a
three quarters.
half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely not. I definitely feel like I'm not in college. Like it doesn't feel like I'm having any sort of college experience. And it's different also from a US experience, I think, from last year too. It's like it's much more independent to begin with. It's much less, oh, we are one school, we're a community. It's more like you guys are all adults and you guys have the privilege of coming to this college, so have fun, figure it out. And I definitely felt that this year of we didn't get a lot of support, and we got a lot of extra work because they're like, oh well, what else are you doing? You're home, you got the extra time, but you're just so much less productive.
Talk about that. So that is interesting, being you feeling like you're less productive than being in the classroom. Tell us what you a little bit more about that.
I found it really hard to, even though I was keeping a schedule, it's really hard to police yourself for very long. It's like one thing to do, like, oh, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks before finals. And it's another thing to just do it for months on end. And I definitely, like, I never really had a weekend because it was like I just couldn't get through the work. So I was just working through every weekend. But if I was in college and I can go into the library, I can sit down and study for 4 hours straight and get so much work done. But because I don't know how it is for other people, but I feel like there's a little bit of social pressure to not be goofing off in the library, even if no one can really see you. It's like you just have to get it done, or you're like, oh, I have 1 hour between my lectures, and I was just ultra productive during those hours, like writing like 3/4 of a final essay, and like, oh my god, it's just like it was so much easier to just, because I could leave it at the door, like I could leave it on campus, commute home, and then I don't think I probably used my desk in my dorm last year like a handful of times because I never needed it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was just thinking too, Gillian, about you being a collegiate athlete and the time management that comes with when you're balancing academics and sports, and then all of a sudden the sports was completely taken away, statistically speaking, grades are better for students when you have something else, probably other things besides sports, but I'll take sports as our example. But, because you really have to have manage your time so well to be able to do, multitask in that regard. And then that's gone. So and then you're stuck, to your point, in your room, which you're like, I know every inch of this entire space and it's driving me crazy. And then I could see that your productivity would go down.
Mm-hmm.
And and just, to that point as well, like, what are the distractions? Like, tell us what, like, what are things that were drawing you in when you're like, okay, I should be studying, but what was what was back there that was enticing you?
I don't think I've ever used my phone so much in like cumulatively since I got it in like 7th grade to now. I was on my phone a lot because I just had nothing else fun to do. There wasn't anyone that I could talk to. And if I was talking to someone, it was through my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I found an app at one point that kept me occupied for 2 weeks or so, where if you didn't touch your phone, it would grow like a tree or something. And it was like, you have to not touch it for 60 minutes or 45 minutes or something like that. But then I got through all of them. And then once you like grow all the trees, you can then like pause it and then go on your phone and then go back and it'll still grow the tree. So it stopped working.
You outsmarted it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So what are you excited about for the future when, as things start to open up? I know Ben's opening up a lot more. Tell us about what you're excited about, either for the future, like going back to school, or what comes up for you?
I'm really excited to go and get back into swimming and water polo. And almost every Thursday last year, I would go to these debates just in some societies, the Philosophical Society, and they do Thursday debates at like 8 o'clock. And it was so much fun. It's just something to do. I just want to do something.
Yeah.
Just want to like get back and see people, and just like it was insane how like in a breakout room making small talk at the end of the year with one person turns on their camera and you talk for 2 minutes and it's like that's the highlight of my week. So I'm hoping to get back to hating small talk. That's the goal.
That's awesome. And Gillian, is Trinity College planning, or is there a plan for next year already? Like, are they saying we're going back all in person, or are they already gearing up for distance learning, continuing that?
I don't think they've ever had a plan for anything. Over the summer, I looked it up. I was like, what's Trinity College's plan for COVID? And I was like, oh, they totally have a plan. But I remembered, if it seems like it's coherent and they actually have a plan in place, that's not my college. It's the college in Ohio or wherever. So gotta watch out for that. I got excited. I was like, oh, they have a plan already in August.
Yeah, no.
They didn't.
So you'll be like you'll get your plane ticket and just decide. You're going to go back? Do you go back to the same spot to live, or do you have to find a new place?
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to live, but I do plan on going back. I'm assuming that as vaccination rollout increases, that more things are going to maybe be in person, and I don't want to wake up at like 4 a.m. to go to my live classes anymore. So I'm happy to go back.
Yeah. Your parents will miss you, but this is part of the journey.
Yeah.
I know.
And Gillian, what is we have time for just I could keep talking forever, but we're kind of almost to the end of our time. But what would you, is there anything last you'd like to say to our audience, just people who have kind of are interested in what it's been like for you, like overall, what would you like to say about this past year and your experience and how it's felt?
Um, I think that it's important to remember how like lots of young people are feeling incredibly uncertain about the future and about even what's going to come in a few months. Not that most college students are planning past like a month in advance, maybe, but when I'm looking forward and I'm like, how is this going to affect the job market that I'm going to graduate into? Like, how is this going to affect when the labor force might be changing? Like, how is the online like working from home pandemic going to change what the economy looks like? How is it going to change the workforce? Um, Basically, I'm just kind of nerding out about economics, but just like accept that this is like, I mean, nobody has ever dealt with something like this before, but when the first time you're experiencing making decisions for yourself and trying to plan for your future, it seems like there's nothing to plan for,
Mm-hmm.
which is really hard. And I think that after college, if this had happened when I was 25, I would have a much different outlook because, I mean, hopefully, depending on what kind of area I was working in, you would still have some idea about what the next year is going to look like. But I don't even know where I'll be in 1 year because things can change. It just feels like everything is so volatile. Like every time I'm going to go back to college, when am I going to come back home? Is it going to be early? Am I going to have to stay? There's just a lot of uncertainty. And I just feel like everyone should just be gracious and allow for that. And just like accept that people, especially young people, are going to be freaking out about this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you said that so beautifully. And what struck me in my heart is that we have to really, we have to allow for space, right? For what are the ramifications from this? And it will manifest in different ways for different people. Some people will experience maybe some anxiety, some depression. Maybe people will not, and they'll just go right back into the normal life. And there's some people that are like, you know what? There's some stuff I want to take with me. I want to preserve from this time. I want to preserve the quiet. And you said you got to be in loneliness. That's something that is a pretty powerful place to be in, and to learn about yourself during that time is an experience of great growth for you, I imagine. And at 19 years old, to have that open up to you, which in normal life circumstances, it may not have presented itself. And so I hear that this is a time now also for like just to pause and to meet it with compassion, and for adults and teachers and professors to also say, hey, you know what, it's going to take a while to integrate back into what everyone talks about, like, again, I'll put in quotes, the new normal. What that's going to look like for everyone, because it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gillian, I just want to end by saying you are incredible, and I commend you for persevering through all of this unknown, and meeting it with grace, and also, like Steph said, being in the present of what is for you, and especially that time of the deep loneliness. And it takes a lot of courage to talk about it too in an open platform like this. So we really appreciate your openness and being with us today, and just really great to have you. So thanks again for being here with us.
And thank you to oh, sorry, Jillian, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I wasn't really saying anything.
Okay. And I want to thank our audience, and thank you again, Jillian, so much. And Please subscribe and turn on your notifications because we release new episodes weekly, and you can find Twin Chat with S&K on our YouTube channel and Apple Podcast and Spotify. And you can also find us on Instagram at rise.life.coach and riselifecoach.com. So thank you. Thanks, Gillian.
Thanks, Jillian.